glad to have Supe Granda with us. Supe has been in a musical figure for a number of years, starting with the Ozark Mountain Daredevils and then working with a number of other bands and as a songwriter as well, and now in Nashville. And welcome aboard, Supe. What's going on?
Man, I'm doing good, Dale. How are you doing, buddy?
Well, I'm doing good. Is it a little warmer there in Nashville than it is in Missouri?
Well, a little bit, not a lot. The good thing is you can always add about 5 degrees to the Missouri temperature, which is nice here in the wintertime, but in the summer, when you have, 98 degrees, we got over 100. So there's a little trade-off, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, especially right now, I'm sure.
Yep.
So Supe, I've been doing these podcasts, and I generally kind of talk to people about, where they gained their interest in music to start with. So can you tell me a little bit about what brought you to the point that you started to do this for a living?
Yep, I sure can, Dale. Well, when I was a little kid, there was always music in my house, in my family's house.
Uh-huh.
So none of my family members were musical, my father had a stereo, and he had a very extensive record collection. So there was always music in the house. Now his musical taste ranged from Frank Sinatra to Tony Bennett,
uh-huh.
and that was fine until my uncle, my crazy uncle, brought over some Fats Domino and Little Richard records.
Right.
I found those to be much more to my liking than Mel Torme.
Right.
So I borrowed my uncle's Little Richard records and Professor Longhair and Fats Domino. And that's what I listened to incessantly. And when I was young, the sillier the song, the more I liked it. I fell in love with the Purple People Eater.
Uh-huh.
I fell in love with Rubber Biscuit. I fell in love with Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini.
Uh-huh.
That's the kind of stuff that I liked when I was younger. Now, I was listening to these Little Richard records, and then along came the Beatles. The Beatles would cover Little Richard songs and Chuck Berry songs and, those old rock and roll songs.
Right.
I went, hey, wait a minute. Here's 4 kids playing this music. I think I can do that too.
Mm.
So I went to the store, my friend and I, and we went and bought us a Beatle chord book. We learned all the chords in the Beatle book, and we could play Love Me Do, and we could play Long Tall Sally, and we could play, I Want to Hold Your Hand, because the chords are on the page.
Right.
And when I first did that, Dale, I got bit. It's like I got bit by a brown recluse spider, and it just went into my blood, and I couldn't get rock and roll out of my blood.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 65 years old now, and I still can't get it out.
Well, and those chords in the Beatles songs were, if you could learn them, you could learn anything. Because those were,
well, see, it was the same thing. If they were playing the same, they were playing those Little Richard songs.
Yeah.
Going, hey, wait a minute. Here's the Little Richard record. Here's the Beatles. Wait a minute. I can figure this out. This isn't rocket surgery.
Right.
I can figure this out. So I went and got a guitar and a Beatle book and just started.
Wow.
So I started basically just for fun because it was fun.
Right.
I couldn't wait to get off of school, and I couldn't wait to get home and pick up that guitar and start playing, She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah.
Now, this was in St. Louis, correct?
This was in St. Louis. I grew up in St. Louis.
Right.
And I lived in St. Louis till 1969.
Uh-huh.
Which is when I graduated from high school and moved to Springfield, Missouri.
All right.
Which is where I met the rest of the guys in the in the Daredevils.
Uh-huh.
And I lived in Springfield, Missouri for 22 years until I moved to Nashville in 1991, and I've been down here for 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you tell me that, was there any kind of, in 1969 when you're talking about moving to Springfield, was there any sense of the Ozark Jubilee or any of that stuff still going on? I mean, was that around, or what was the musical climate when you got there?
Musical climate was as such. Growing up in St. Louis, I had no idea about the Ozark Jubilee.
Sure.
I had no idea about the Grand Ole Opry. My family didn't listen to the Grand Ole Opry. My family listened to Mel Torme and Frank Sinatra and the Benny Goodman Band.
Uh-huh.
So I had zero idea about that deal. When I moved to Springfield, all of a sudden, I started running into all of these musicians, and they were fantastic musicians. Now, when the Ozark Jubilee packed up their tent and, I guess, moved to Nashville,
right,
there were a lot of people, there were a lot of beautiful musicians in the Ozarks who played on the Ozark Jubilee who said, "Hey, wait a minute, we're not leaving."
Right.
Look at this. Clear water, clean air, beautiful hills, fishing. We've got it all right here. We're not moving to Nashville.
Right.
So they stayed in the Ozarks, and they remained magnificent, beautiful musicians.
Uh-huh.
When I moved to Springfield, I started running into these guys. And I started going, "Hey, wait a minute. These guys are fabulous musicians."
Right.
And then at that point is when I started to accrue a knowledge and a love for country music.
Right.
And it was because of those old Ozark Jubilee guys who didn't want to leave the Ozarks.
Who were some of your favorites of those guys?
Oh, Lord. There were just so many of them down there. And you can find a lot of them moved to Branson.
Oh, yeah.
See?
Oh, absolutely.
So, and I found a lot of rock and roll guys playing in Springfield, a lot of country guys playing in Branson.
Right.
I was just in heaven. I didn't really have any real desire to go to college, except to stay out of Vietnam at the time, 1969. Getting up at 8 in the morning and going to psychology class wasn't my real cup of tea.
Right.
But staying up all night and playing guitar and drinking beer was my cup of tea.
Right.
So I got down there, and then at that point I ran into the rest of the guys in the Daredevils, and they would say, "Well, we started working up songs," and they were country songs.
Uh-huh.
I was going, "Hey, wait a minute, I love this." And so when I started playing bass with the country, for playing country songs, I was going, "Man, this is wonderful," and it opened up a whole new world to me, which hadn't been opened when I was a young kid growing up in St. Louis. I was a rock and roll guy, and so so I came to the party a little bit late, but boy, I sure do like the party.
Well, by the time 69 rolls around, I mean, there are some rockers that are experimenting with country too. I mean, there's
correct.
Dylan and the Byrds and all those things. So,
correct.
I mean, were you guys listening to that stuff, or what was kind of influencing your the direction of where you guys were going musically?
Yeah, well, there was that, of course. The Byrds and and Bob Dylan.
Right.
And then, but also, I got turned on to Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, Ernest Tubb.
Oh yeah.
And then there's the whole bluegrass world.
Right.
So I got turned on to that. I couldn't get enough of it.
Uh-huh.
But I came in, instead of growing up in the country music world, I came in and I got introduced to it. Well, like you said, Dale, with the Sweetheart of the Rodeo album. You know.
Oh yeah.
What a beautiful record that is. You know?
Yeah.
The Flying Burrito Brothers.
Yeah, stone country albums too. There's not very much rock and roll in those things at all. They're
Exactly.
real
You know?
country records. Yeah.
And so you know, I just found a whole other group of colors to put on my palette that I could paint with. You know.
Right.
And I loved it. And I still love it.
Oh, absolutely. Although the modern country stuff is definitely taking a turn from the. I don't think Ernest Tubb would recognize much of it.
No, he sure wouldn't. And I don't recognize much of it either. It's just, you know, it's just cheese whiz, you know.
Yeah. No
it's just
kidding.
a bunch of business guys selling cheese whiz to, you know, Americans who watch
Right.
a lot of TV.
And like cheese whiz. Yeah.
Yeah, and like cheese whiz, right, exactly. I myself don't like cheese whiz, so I don't pay much attention to it. I couldn't tell you the difference between, you know, any of those guys named Luke.
Right.
You know, they're all named Luke and Keith and Dirks and Darius. I couldn't tell the difference between them, you know. Now when Vince Gill comes on and sings, I recognize Vince Gill.
There you go.
But when it gets into all those other, you know, I ain't got time for it. I'm too old to try to understand it, so I just let it lay by the side of the road, and I just go on down the road.
Well, so tell me a little bit about, you know, a couple of years later. I mean, it looks like that's about 71 is when you guys start to play together under various names.
Correct.
And tell me how did that start?
Well, this is a nice story. When I went to a school in Springfield in 1969, I went down there, and like I said, I wasn't that interested in school, but I was very interested in music. All of a sudden, I'm surrounded by all of these beautiful musicians, and I'm just going, man, this guy's great, and that guy's even greater, and this guy's really good too. I'm going, wait a minute. So there were half a dozen of us, and we were songwriters. And we knew that we could go out and make a whole lot of money if we went out and just became another cover band, playing, you know, Doobie Brothers songs and, you know, and Three Dog Night covers.
Sure.
But because we were writing our own songs, we decided to get together and just play nothing but our material.
Okay.
So we all got together at the new Bijou Theater, which set up there on a East Traffic Way, Chestnut Expressway, up in East Springfield. And we just started playing nothing but our own songs.
Okay.
We would sit there and go, hey, wait a minute, these are pretty good songs. You know?
Right.
These are every bit as good as, you know, any of the other songs out there.
Right.
So I'd say we would get together, once or twice a week, just for the specific purpose of playing our songs. I'll play your song if you play my song.
Right.
And we'll play his song if he plays our song.
Right.
And they'll play my song if I play the. So we got together basically more as a songwriters collective than as a band.
Right.
Now, we had all these songwriters and all of these songs, and then we decided to get together one evening and play them for our friends. At that point, we became a band. As soon as we started playing these songs we've been working up, as soon as we started playing them for the public, we became a band. And then we had to get a name, then we had to get some gigs, then we had to get a manager, then we had to get a van, and we had to drive around and play gigs. But we loved every minute of it.
Now, was Family Tree the main name back then?
Yes.
Okay.
When we got together, the first name we decided on was Family Tree. We were Family Tree for, a year and a half, couple years maybe.
Wow.
until we got the record contract.
Uh-huh.
When we got the record contract, we had to change the name because there was already a band in New England called Family Tree.
Uh-huh.
They had the name copywritten, and we had to change it. So we went through the agony of trying to find a new band name. So we were contemplating calling ourselves the Undercover Overalls. We thought about Buffalo Chips. We thought about, there were just 1,000 crazy names until one evening somebody came up with the name. He says, "Oh, what about Cosmic Corn Cob and his amazing Ozark Mountain Daredevils?"
Uh-huh.
Now, that was funny. We all laughed. And we says, well, nobody wanted to step up and be the front man.
Right.
And be Cosmic Corn Cob. So we dropped that.
Uh-huh.
Then we just became the Amazing Ozark Mountain Daredevils. And because there was a band called the Amazing Rhythm Aces,
right,
we had to drop the word amazing.
Right.
That left us with the Ozark Mountain Daredevils.
There you go.
There you go.
All these years later, and you're still there.
Well, oh, yeah. Oh, man, we're a lucky bunch of fellas, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so how did John Hammond get involved with all of this?
John Hammond. The man who ran the New Bijou Theater was a friend of ours by the name of Steve Canaday.
Uh-huh.
When the New Bijou Theater burned down, Steve Canaday moved to New Jersey, and he took one of our tapes with him. We made a couple tapes, and one morning he just got up and says, "I'm going to go into New York City, and I'm going to go find John Hammond. I'm going to play." And he was that kind of guy, Dale. He would get up and say, "I'm going to do this," and by God, he did that.
Wow.
So he got up one morning and says, "I'm going to go into New York and find John Hammond and play him this tape." And got his way into John Hammond's office and played him a couple songs. And John Hammond turned around real slow and said, "Man, I really like this."
Wow.
Give me their number and I'll contact them.
Uh-huh.
So about 2 weeks later, he contacted us.
Uh-huh.
And sent down a producer
uh-huh.
by the name of Michael Sunday.
Did you have a sense of who John Hammond was at that time? Did you guys?
Oh gosh,
realize?
yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, he was. He discovered everybody.
Oh yeah, from all the way back. He's been around
from all the way back.
Yeah.
So he sent down a producer, and he made a demo.
Uh-huh.
And they took the demo back to New York, and this guy passed on us.
Okay.
Now, because he passed on us, we had a free demo.
Right. Right.
Okay? So John Hammond, I don't know if he ever heard the demo, our tape or not, but Michael Sunday passed on us, and we had that demo tape, and that's the very same demo tape that we took to A&M Records in Los Angeles. When we took it to A&M, there's a gentleman out there by the name of David Anderley.
Uh-huh.
David Anderley heard the tape and said, "Oh, I like this."
Right.
And immediately signed us.
Wow.
So it was John Hammond's original demo that got us our deal at A&M with David Anderley.
Do you have any idea what songs it was that was on that demo?
Oh yeah, the first album.
The whole first album. Wow.
Yeah, except If You Want to Get to Heaven, because and Jackie Blue, our two biggest hits, hadn't been written yet.
Right.
See, this is the very beginning. So, Black Sky, Country Girl, Spaceship Orion, Standing on a Rock, Chicken Train. That was the original demo tape we made. That was the original tape that New York passed on, but Los Angeles didn't.
And so Anderley, were they just trying? I mean, the Eagles by this time had a little bit of success, right? I mean, was that what they were looking for? Is just kind of the Midwest Eagles, or what would be the best way to say their thoughts about it?
This is the best way to say that. David Anderley heard the tape, and he was very good friends with Glenn Johns.
Right.
And as you know, Glenn Johns had just done the first Eagles record.
Right.
So the two of them were looking for a project to do together. David heard our demo tape and called Glenn and said, "Glenn, I found the band that the two of us can produce together." He had done the Eagles, but the Eagles were, and they still are, a little too slick. A little too L.A., a little bit too chrome-plated. They were looking for something a little funkier.
Well,
so they found us. You know, I mean, you can sit out in Los Angeles and make all of those Eagles records with all of those Eagles guys. J.D. Souther and Jackson Brown and Linda Ronstadt, and they all make the same record over and over and over. So Glenn and David want something a little bit funkier, so they came a little bit more American. So they came to the Midwest and they recorded us.
Wow. Why did they decide to do it in England?
Because that's where Glenn's home studio was.
Okay, because Glenn was also involved in some of those Stones records, and I mean he was involved prior to the Eagles. I mean he had done.
Oh God! Well, he did the Kinks.
Yeah.
He did the Kinks and the Who and the Stones, and his home studio. I guess it wasn't his home studio, but his basic studio that he liked to work at all the time was Olympic Studios in London. And whenever he'd go in and he'd block out a month in the studio. That's where he produced Beggar's Banquet.
Wow.
That's where he produced Who's Next.
Right.
That's where he produced those Kinks records, and that's where he did the Eagles record, was Olympic Studio. Now, he took us there for two reasons. Number one, that was his favorite studio. He was very well acquainted with the studio, and he felt most comfortable working there.
Right.
So we flew over there. Now, the second reason is he wanted to get us out of our comfort zone.
Okay.
He wanted to get us out of Springfield, so we didn't have, Tiny and Tony didn't stop by.
Right.
Well, let's go see the band. Oh, I have to leave today. I got to take, I got to take my sister to the doctor.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so we went to London to eliminate all of those distractions.
What was that? What was London like at that time? Give me a sense of what that was like.
Well, early 70s, when we walked in the studio, we worked in Studio A. Studio B was Badfinger.
Okay.
So when you go to the the smoking lounge or the lounge of the studio, you're sitting around with the guys in Badfinger.
Wow.
At the time, Humble Pie was another band.
Oh yeah.
So you go into the studio, you drink coffee and smoke cigarettes with the guys in Humble Pie.
Wow.
Now, because Olympic was such a rock and roll studio, there were a whole lot of rock and roll guys in there all the time. Townsend stops by.
Wow.
Townsend stops by to pick up a tape. Sticks his head in the door and says, "Hello, Glenn. Hey, Pete." And he leaves.
Wow.
So that's what it was. How do I say? It was kind of like the Flame, and all the musicians were the Moss, and everybody kind of gathered right there in Olympic, and we were in the studio recording Chicken Train.
Well, and probably feeling pretty out of everyone's element, or was that something that was easily adapted to? I mean, what was it like being from, those, the guys, I mean, this was a different world that wasn't quite as universal as it is now. What was it like kind of making that adjustment?
Well, it was easy just for the sole reason that we were there to make a record.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of time to just go out and, carouse around London. We'd get up in the day and we'd go and work, and then we'd have our supper, and then we'd work into the night, and then at the end of the session, we were beat.
Yeah.
So we'd go home, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and
start it all over.
I mean, we weren't out getting drunk with Pete Townsend, So we were pretty focused, and because we were a group of songwriters who were recording our songs, we were very focused on the music and very unfocused on any of the tomfoolery.
Wow. That's quite a thought for 19. What was it? 72? Was that when that?
73, I think.
73.
Yeah.
And so by that time, if you want to go to heaven, had been written.
Correct.
And so when you come home and the album comes out, what was that like at that time?
Oh, it was magnificent. I mean, good Lord. I mean, in our hometown, you can go to the record store and there's a bin of our records,
Yeah.
And our records were always sandwiched in between Ozzy Osbourne and Donny Osmond. But yeah, it was a dream come true, buddy.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a dream come true. And when the record came out, now another thing is, we were just a bunch of 24-year-old kids.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So, for a bunch of 24-year-old kids to have an album out, that was pretty cool, man. Yeah.
But then the song that probably is most recognized with you was actually not on that album, but on the following album.
Correct. Jackie Blue.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that is, you can listen to that. It's still just a beautiful, beautiful melodic song that, I never get tired of. I mean, it's just always good.
That's correct. That was, one of the songwriters was Larry Lee.
Right.
And he had that knack for writing those kinds of songs.
Uh-huh.
And, to be honest with you, I think, Jackie Blue is a nice song, but I think he has 2 or 3 other songs that are even better.
Well, which ones?
But they weren't hits.
Right. I mean, that's just a great pop record. I mean, it hits all.
That's a good record. But we just recorded it. We weren't even considering it, because it's so atypical of our sound.
Right.
But that was Larry's element. That was Larry's contribution to our sound, and we recorded it right in between 2 other, rock and roll and country songs, and it just happened to take off and be a hit for us, and, none of us were complaining.
Right, absolutely. Number 3,
yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty. Do you remember what else was on the charts when it hit its apex?
Oh, yes. I remember when it was climbing up the charts, the songs it was competing with was Philadelphia Freedom by Elton John.
Right.
Thank God I'm a Country Boy. And Hey, Won't You Play? Another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song.
Absolutely.
Those were the songs. Oh, and Chevy Van.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those were the songs that were all kind of jockeying for top the top position at that specific time.
Wow. Now, you know, I mean, obviously, you guys have all. I mean, your band is unique in that, you know, I mean, obviously, a lot of people have been through it, but you know, everyone is kind of a collective. I mean, it was a collective of songwriters. I mean, that's a good way to say that. I mean, there were just very many people involved. Mm-hmm. And so how does that, I mean, does that create any kind of tension in that there's nobody that's just wanting to play the songs, they want to have their song on there? I mean, how does that change how you guys work?
Well, that's a tension that's in any band. You know?
Right.
That's the kind of, that, you know, as an example, you know, Creedence Clearwater Revival. I mean, Fogerty, you know, wrote all the songs. He made all the money. Those other guys were just kind of driving, you know, Subarus.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I'm not sure Fogerty got all the money he made, but yeah, definitely. I mean,
correct. Well, yeah, and you know, and so you know, you do get some competition. That's why we didn't produce ourselves.
Okay.
We always hired a producer to come in and say, this song, and this song. You know, and his job was a producer, and he picked the material. But when you get, you know, 5, 6 songwriters in a room, there's going to be some competition.
Sure.
There's going to be some bantering about, but you know, it never really got. There were never any really. We never really got to shouting matches. You know, there was never any lawsuits and backstabbing. There was none of that. You know.
Well, that's good.
Because we knew that everyone in the end would be compensated, which we were.
Right. Now, you actually wrote a book about the Ozark Mountain Daredevils. Yep.
I sat down about 10 years ago. I said, well, if I don't write this book, it's not going to get written.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, I like books like that. You know, I like keeping.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, I've always liked those kind of books, you know. So I just kind of sat down and started writing. And it took me 4.5 years. But I finished. The book is entitled It Shined.
Right.
The Saga of the Ozark Mountain Daredevils. And I wanted to make it, I wanted to be put on history shelves as much as the music shelves, because it's American history. I mean, We're a very American band. You know, we didn't come from New York.
Right.
We didn't come from L.A. We didn't come from London. We came from Springfield, Missouri, and continued to live in Springfield, Missouri. So I wanted it to be, you know, kind of just a bit of American history.
Right.
Now, it took me a long time to write it. I bet I researched it for 6 months because I wanted all of the facts to be correct.
Sure.
You know? So the book is factually correct, but I wanted to write it in an entertaining style because I didn't want it to, you know, I didn't want it to come off like an encyclopedia.
Right.
So I wanted it to be informative and entertaining at the same time. And, so it took me a long time to do it. And I'm really, really glad I did it. And hundreds and hundreds of people have come out of the woodwork to thank me for writing it.
Uh-huh.
Just because, you know, people are interested in it. You know, we had a lot of fans. We still have a lot of fans.
Oh yeah.
And they wanted to know about those recording sessions. They wanted to know about the tours and all the people we met and worked with, you know.
Well, and actually, when we get this interview up, I will also put a link to the Amazon site and to your site if people do want to buy that.
Yeah, put it right to my site. You know, they can write to me directly, brother. And I'll go into this other room here, and I'll package up the book and take it to the post office myself.
And it will be a lot cheaper to do that, although if they do want an ebook of that, they could get that through Amazon as well.
Yes, they can. So. Yeah. Now, the ebook, you'll have to go through Author House.
Okay.
authorhouse.com and Amazon if you want the ebook. Yeah, just write to me. I'll send you one.
Now, of course, Supe, you moved to Nashville to kind of work as a songwriter.
Correct.
And so I know that one of the things I remember that was kind of a really neat deal is you wrote a song that Chet Atkins ended up
yes.
Doing. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Years ago, my songwriting partner, Mark Denny, and I wrote a song called Ode to Mel Bay. Mel Bay, I grew up in the shadow of the Mel Bay Music Store.
Right.
South St. Louis County. When I was young, I would go and buy guitar picks and guitar strings and instruction books from Mel Bay.
Right.
Now, we wrote the song, and I brought it down to Nashville, along with a whole other box of songs. But I thought somebody down here would want to pay tribute to Mel Bay.
Right.
So I pitched it around Nashville, down around Music Row. See, but back then there was a lot of bad country music back then too, Just as there is today.
Sure.
And there were a lot of guys in hats and, a lot of guys named Luke and, that kind of Clint.
Right.
Nobody would touch it. They would say, oh, yeah, that's really cute. That's really clever, Supe. But we're looking for relationship songs.
Sure.
Do you have any relationship songs? And I would just go, no, I don't really have any relationship songs. So I pitched it around town for about a year. And then I got discouraged and quit pitching it. Now, I had a band, Supe and the Sandwiches, and we played the song. We played every night, and the crowd would go nuts. After one night, a gentleman by the name of John Burns walked up to me, introduced himself, and said, do you have Ode to Mel Bay on tape? I said, yes, I do. And I handed him a copy. John Burns is the son of Jethro Burns.
Oh, wow. One of the great musicians.
John Burns says to me, my Uncle Chet is going to love this song because Chet Atkins did so much work with Mel Bay putting out guitar books.
Right.
So John Burns took the song, I guess, to a family barbecue and played it for his Uncle Chet.
Wow.
Uncle Chet loved it and recorded it.
Wow.
That's basically how it went down. Yeah.
Well, and Jethro Burns was a part of Homer and Jethro.
Homer and Jethro, it's exactly right, who I also love. And Ode to Mel Bay is written in the style of Homer and Jethro. Because my friend Howie and I loved Homer and Jethro, and we actually kind of became Homer and Jethro.
Well, Jethro, his mandolin playing is, that's just some of the best music I've ever heard.
They are magnificent musicians.
Oh, yeah.
Besides being hilariously funny.
Oh, yes. And so, it always seemed to me like they kind of gave short shrift to how much, how great their music was. I mean, I know that some people never took it seriously just because they didn't write those relationship songs, but they wrote about the Battle of Cucamonga and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, now this goes back to the beginning of our conversation when I said I was more affected by the Purple People Eater.
Oh, absolutely.
Than I was with, your love is an ocean that crosses the, emotions of my mind, I still don't like any of that sappy stuff.
Uh-huh. Right. So the Battle of Cucamonga was on your early playlist, is that what
gosh, yes. Yes.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And so, you've written about other things. I mean, you've made a wonderful career out of this. What are some things that you'd like people to find out about or discover, or something they don't know
about me?
Yeah, or you, or your songwriting, or your song.
Oh yeah. Whatever. Well, the thing is, it's the same way with the Daredevils. We had 2 hit songs.
Right.
We have 12 albums out. So let me see. Okay, 10, 12. There's 120 songs out there, and people know 2 of them.
Right.
It's the same way with my career. There's the Ode to Mel Bay. Man, I've got 10 or 12 solo albums out, full of what I believe to be quality material.
Right.
Once people start digging into and delving into my Soup du Jour records, my Soup and the Sandwich records, there's a lot of really, really good work that I'm very proud of, and I put a lot of time and effort into it.
Well, sure.
I would like for them to go and learn about and appreciate those songs too.
Well, so give me a few of your favorites to start them with.
Okay. Yes. There's a song called, The Pasta Man.
Okay.
Pasta Man is my Italian reggae piece. And I still play it to this day. There's a song called, another one that gets a lot of reaction is a song called The Smartest Man in the World.
Right. That was the name of one of your albums.
Yeah. So there's that whole batch of songs. Now, if you want to get into more Homer and Jethro stuff, there's a song. I had a band down here called Mark and Mike. It's a banjo-playing friend of mine, and there's an album out there called Sing Along with Mark and Mike. There's a couple songs. There's a song on there called Biscuits and Gravy that I'm very, very proud of. Once again, in the Homer and Jethro style.
Right.
That's a little bit harder to find, but you can still find it. And so there's like I said, hundreds of songs that I've done that people may not be that familiar with, but once you start looking at them, on my website Soup Line, if you go there, I mean, good Lord, there's 12, 15 different albums that I've done that people can ingest. and I'm still, as a matter of fact, I've got a couple records I'm getting ready to put out, new records, and I've got another 10, 15 songs that haven't even recorded yet.
Wow.
I can't seem to turn the faucet off, Dale.
Well, please don't. Keep coming. Well, so you just mentioned Soup Line. That's spelled as your nickname is SUPE, not SOUP, and so
it's short for Superman. That's why it's spelled SUPE.
I'm going to put some links up, but soupline.com is SUPE line.com. SUPELINE. Right.
Soup Line.
And so we'll put some links up to everything, and really appreciate you coming on and talking. Hope you enjoyed that interview. I would like to point out it was actually done prior to the news of Glenn Frey's death, and no one intended to make light of any Eagles' death. No Eagles were harmed in this interview. Visit DaleWileyShow.net. Go buy some books. Go throw some money. Copyright 2016.